What is up, everybody? BobbyFi back with my good friend Eric Sheets. We are talking a little golf today. I'm a little hoarse. We were at the series screaming, and then screaming at home last night in Game 6, and the Dodgers took it home. So I'm thrilled. So I'm ready to move on with DFS, with some golf, with some football. We'll do a little later today. Sheets, I'm doing pretty good today. How are you doing out there?
Yeah, personal stuff going on, which is a little annoying. But aside from that, from a DFS perspective, we're now fully, well, we're not fully concentrated, but now there's no baseball, there's no basketball, so the daily DFS action is limited. So now what we're doing is, the focus is football, golf, and then for me, I'm continuing to work on my on the MMA / NASCAR stuff, and I'm also spending some time researching and doing tools and working on spreadsheets and things like that. Also, just so you know, just in the sports world, next week is the Breeders' Cup, which is a really the biggest day in horse racing, actually. And I'll probably do something as far as that goes. And overall, been just kind of busy. Yep, good on you for the Dodgers for the World Series. Very, very nice. And I really don't even want to get into the nonsense that happened after with the COVID. I'm just so over everything COVID related right now.
I hear you.
That I'm just kind of not interested. If you want to know the truth, I just want to search for COVID related things related to sports on Twitter and just delete all of it. You know what I mean? That's that. Yeah. All right, so you want to talk about golf? Because I actually did a little bit of quite a bit of work and quite a bit of planning and quite a bit. I have some thoughts on how to approach slates like this in general. And
let's get into it, man.
So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and I'm going to give you my just kind of it's just like we're going to build this from scratch. I have other lineups, but I didn't want to give away what I'm doing until we get there. So this is one of those tournaments that we've seen since the restart where you don't have the top players, right? And that's when you see guys like Todd and Varner and all these guys at these what seem like inflated prices, but remember it's all relative to the rest of the field. So it's a pretty weak field in general. Second thing is it's at a shortish course, which is the course that's in Bermuda, not Bermuda grass, although it is, but in Bermuda. So first of all, with it being a weak field, there's probably going to be quite a bit of variance involved in the first place. And second of all, if the weather is what they say it is, the first day might not be that bad, but the last 3 days is going to be 25 to 35 mile per hour winds. So if there wasn't enough variance already in a course like this and a field like this, there's just going to be just a carload more of it with respect to the wind. Now, again, you got to make the cut first in the first 2 days, and then you got to suffer through the last two. But my approach for this particular slate, this is where I haven't done as well on these types of slates in the weak fields as others, and I think I just accepted chalk a little bit too easily in these types of fields, and so I am gonna. It's gonna be kind of fun as I'm building these things. I'm really gonna have very, very little tolerance for high owned players, like at all. And that's just the way I'm going to approach it. And then it's funny as we go through some of these guys, you're going to see I have kind of like a fun, very Sheets-ish type stack or whatever Sheets-ish type build that I think you guys will. The guys who know me from a long time from poker will probably appreciate. I'm looking for guys that it's not a really long course, so I'm looking for guys that aren't helped that much by long drives and yet also really windy. I like guys that can that are good with irons, and again, but my overarching theme is I'm just really just having no tolerance for high-owned guys where I can avoid it.
Yeah, it's interesting because going back to just an overall strategy, like one of the things that I found that I thought was beneficial that we did on these slates before was forcing yourself to play some of these cheaper guys for no other reason than they're going to be low owned. Right. Honestly, I'm looking at the ownership, and I ran some projections today. And basically, they want to hammer these guys above 10K into your lineups. They want to try and get them in, but they don't need to use the 6K guys. So it's kind of a weird thing. Like at first I was thinking, maybe the smarter thing is to go more middling. But what they're sort of doing is they're pairing up all these lower 7K guys and up to 8.5K. I mean, the projections will do this, no matter what you put your percentages on, if you're not going to lock someone in. And it's just sort of wild, the guys who the guys who I'm sort of ending up with here. And I look at the top of this board, and I think you're going to have the most ownership on the highest priced players.
You know what? A couple of things. Also, we could talk a little theory if you want. Also, I've been thinking about this a lot. Is the idea of, let's say I have two guys that are close enough in projections, close enough in price, and one guy is just much lower owned than the other. Obviously, you want to try to take the lower owned guy, all else being equal, right? And then I started thinking, I mean, maybe you could help me with this. Does that apply more? I would think that applies, it's more effective at the higher levels than the lower ones, only because of the raw points that are involved. Like, so let's just say, for example, that I liked, I don't know, Zalatoris more than Todd, just for example. If I like Zalatoris more than Todd, let's say I liked them the same, and Zalatoris was, say, 5% owned and Todd was 30, then yeah, I have a huge edge, in that. Is that a better edge to have than the same type of opinion on, say, the difference between two 6K guys, right? If one guy is that high owned, is it more effective to fade the cheaper guy, or is it more effective to fade the higher price guy?
I think that in general, it would be more effective to, you'd want to make your decision. Obviously you have a more idea for the reasonable projection for the higher price guys that are more likely to make it, et cetera. So I think that's what I would give the edge to in general. But in a slate like this, right, I don't think there's a huge difference between this upper level and the middle tier or the bottom tier. So
again, I was just talking theoretically. The other thing I want to kind of bring up, kind of an industry related thing, which you and I haven't really talked about. There's been a pretty, I would say, even for DFS standards, a rather nasty DFS Twitter fight that's been going on, leading to not a fight, but leading to like this big challenge where empire makers have basically challenged like the whole world in DFS, giving odds to whoever everybody wants it. And so him and Osimo are just going like head to head in like multiple Thunderdomes for like the next week or two. And they're really like nasty, going back at each other. And it's weird to hear Osimo getting nasty because he's like the
sweetest guy. I'm great. I'm here for it, man. I'm all about it. I like this side of Osimo, and I'm tired of these people who are literally act like these giant bullies, but are these nerdy kids behind their computers, and they talk trash and they talk about people's families. They talk about your beliefs. I'll just be frank with this whole thing. I'm not a fan of guys like Empire Maker and the way they talk to people online, and I don't blame Osimo for jumping back and even instigating some of this stuff. And I'm glad to see it, because Empire Maker is the vainest person I've ever read anything from. And his takes on things, if you have a belief like I do, and I obviously have to do about this election, but I'm not tweeting 100 times a day about it and insulting the other side all day long anymore. I mean, I went through a day where I probably did that early in this thing. He's been consistently doing this lately, and that's what I think really got Osimo going.
Yeah, well, what's interesting to me is less about about that part and more about something else. So what and I didn't realize this. So what Alex has been saying is, and what everybody's been saying is that, well, what Empire Maker, all he really does is he takes what they call the industry aggregate optimal and just kind of jams it in. And it got to kind of like a sub-argument or a sub-discussion with respect to projections and how much you should, quote unquote, be a slave to projections, or how much you should deviate from them and things like that. And that to me is obviously the more interesting thing than one guy yelling at the other guy. So it's so funny. Like Alex even said, boy, I better hold off on on releasing my PGA projection because I don't want Empire Maker to do his aggregate projection models quite yet. Whatever it is. And so what's interesting again is when it comes to like projections. You know what I mean? It's becoming kind of a hot topic again. Is how much they quote unquote rely on them as much. And I'm really, me, I'm like, I like looking at them. I like doing whatever. But to me, it's just so much more important, the ownership aspect of it, than the projection. Because remember, the projection aspect is a median projection, right? You're not betting on them to run the median, right? And and people spend so much time on the accuracy of the projections, where it's actually the accuracy of the ownership projections that's more important. You know what I mean? If you told me like that what the actual ownership was going to be in everybody, I know that I would make a fortune. You know what I mean? Like that's hard. It's hard to do. Where the median projection is like, you know, good for you, but you know, you don't even want that. You want some of this and some of that. So when I go through some of the guys that I like, first of all, when I go through some of the guys I like, one of the things I'm going to say is, well, I like these guys, and it could be a projection-based play. It's going to say, well, this guy projects the same as another guy who's 3 times his own, so that's why I'm going to pick him. Well, I think that's very legitimate. But there's one guy we're going to talk about who, if it's literally zero chance that he could ever project well, and we're going to go over why that is again, and he's going to get ignored just because of that. And I don't know, the whole thing is very interesting to me.
Absolutely.
So you want to do what you knew?
Yeah, we'll go through them. I just want to touch what you said on about ownership and all that, and I think that's partially why and I've done well in all the sports overall. It's not like I've had a losing year with any of the major sports that I do. I mean, golf is one I've just gotten involved in, but the thing that's interesting is that when I see with basketball, I can immediately tell you roughly who's going to be where they're going to be on.
You're like really good at that.
It's automatic. It just becomes a part of your what you know. Actually, in baseball, historically, I had been really good at that, but this year was a little trickier because the projections were always all over the place, and some guys were only pitching a few innings, and there was different stuff this year that made it harder. I think that they've been so far off on these other things based on different systems, and other people complained about this too, that I think we really have to try and figure out what we think ourselves, not just rely on what everybody's projection.
But you know what's hard? You know what's hard, Bobby? So this is what's hard. So like you said, like basketball and baseball, for example, and even football, I mean, you have a real good sense of what's going to be popular. And you know, I do too, because again, for different reasons. Like you look at the salaries of, well, people are just going to be forced to do this because of this, that, and the other thing. And with me, I'm like, boy, this is so logical to me. So, I guess that's what's going to be popular. You know what I mean? I like use myself as a good barometer, which is pretty sharp in its own way. You know what I mean? So, but when it comes to stuff like golf, it's not exactly so easy. You know what I mean? To just figure that out. So that's why it's a little harder.
I agree. So, I mean, getting into that, and I'll still say I do see that. That's why I wanted to point out the projection. The guys over 10K, in my opinion, are going to have the most ownership of anybody. And also, by the way, in golf, I've noticed that that's been a pretty common trend, and usually you have great players up there. On a week like this week, I think that, I mean, if you want to get creative with something, I mean, maybe you really just don't play. I actually personally like Brendan Todd, and I like Doc Redman in this spot, but Doc Redman I think is going to be the ultra chalk is what I would guess. So I'm okay with skipping these guys, but I probably will have a little bit of Todd.
Okay. What's interesting about Todd, 2 things, is that, well, number one, he is literally the only person playing this week that played last week in this field, I believe. I think that he's the only one who played in last week's event and then is coming here for this. And the reason why is he won this last year. So he's coming to defend his shit, you know, which you got to respect. So like for me, again, just I do think that actually Brendan Todd is going to be lower owned than typically guys that are the top, you know, salary guys in the field are going to be owned. You know what I mean? I think that he's going to be under-owned relative to that.
Agreed.
I think he's fine. I don't think I'm going to – see, I'm going to probably end up going a kind of a different route. But I do like him a little bit. I actually like the other guy a little bit more. But just think about Zalatoris. I mean, I'm just kind of not interested in these hype guys. You know what I mean? Like he was like everybody's darling after the U.S. Open. He came back, and I'm doing this now from memory because I bit into this too. Like his first start after the U.S. Open, I think he was in a weak field like this, and he was just pounded through the roof in ownership, pounded by everybody, and he was just okay. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I'm going to do that. Varner, I don't know if I'm going to do that either. Redman, I like just like you do. He's going to be really, really chalky though. Yep. But like I said, he's like a really good ball striker, and that's the kind of guy you kind of want in this thing. And the guy right below him, actually, Grillo also. So those 2 guys, I think of these top 5, they'll be the ones that I probably play the most of if I play any of them. You know what I mean? How do you rank these top 10K guys?
For me, it's Todd and Redmond, and I think just I got put off a little bit. I'm not going to play a ton of lineups, and like you were saying, I think Zalatoris and Redmond are going to be so popular that I just think I can try and look other ways. But I would like Zalatoris based on all the stuff, except for the ownership on him, and I don't see him as being that much better of a play. I certainly don't see him as being a much better of a play than a guy like, some of these other guys down in the 9K ranges. Like, who did I have that I love? Oh, I love Denny McCarthy. He's also going to be popular, but I can go with a different build and have like McCarthy as my highest spend up. I don't know. I don't see the need to play these guys, but I would rank it Todd, Redmond, Varner, Zalatoris, Grillo.
Okay, so let's talk about the 9K range. So here's my first thought. And again, this is something I picked up from you, but this is something that you turned me on to a while ago, which again I'm really into. Like 10 years ago when I learned how to play golf or whatever, I mean I watched these Charlie Hoffman videos. Like was really just incredible at compressing the ball. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's one particular move he makes which is really great. And the thing is, this is 10 freaking years ago. I just don't need to play like these. I really would rather, not to be ageist or anything, but I'd rather just lean towards these younger guys, especially in GPPs. I think they just have more upside because they're younger. And not that Hoffman can't do it. He surprised everybody. A couple months ago, he popped some big number out of nowhere or whatever. But I just don't think that I'm going to be playing him. The other 9K guys. So McCarthy, yeah. So here's the thing about McCarthy. He's a great putter, right? He could be the best putter, and in a situation like this, that's you kind of not want to need to make some putts, So he's fine. Probably my favorite of what's going to be probably the chalky guys is going to be Stenson. I do like him a lot. He is going to be high owned, but he's going to be fine. He's going to fit into my one of my mad scientist ideas. So I do like him. Trinagel, I don't like too much, but I do like Ventura. Okay, he's pretty good. He is good ball striker, good at everything. And one thing that's the same as what's his name? Guy just Stenson and Ventura. We're gonna start with this Scandinavian Linkoping theme, okay? Mm-hmm. Where we're gonna be playing these guys that play in Europe, that can play in the wind a little bit, and he actually has some good numbers also. Looks young enough for me. So Ventura is gonna be. I know he's getting. I watched a couple of shows. He's getting a little bit of love. He's getting a little bit of thing, but not that much. So I do like him. And I didn't really think much about Malnati. You like any? What do you like about these 9Ks? Anything?
So I don't find myself in love with much except for Stenson and McCarthy. I do love Stenson. He's the other one. I don't think he's going to be as high owned as the other, as like McCarthy and Zalatoris and Redmond. I just think that he's somehow getting overlooked just because he hasn't played as much. He's a guy who I feel like actually I had sort of circled as, wow, usually in this spot, like compared to these golfers, you would have Stenson as like the mega chalk, but I don't see that as being how it plays out because of the love and the people hyping up, especially McCarthy. But I've heard a lot of Tringale love as well. Just preferred play. Oh, and Ventura, obviously, like you mentioned. Preferred plays would be McCarthy, Stenson, Ventura for me. I think Malnati's going to be reasonably owned too. I don't think I'm going to play anybody else in this range as of right now. I don't mind them, but I sort of feel blah about it. And I think this is where you're going to see your second highest chalk situation. So I mostly am sticking with Stenson and McCarthy in this range with some Ventura.
Okay. So in the 8K range, so Heinrich Norlander. All right, coming from Sweden, we like him anyway. Now he's again going to be popular. Okay, I presume.
Yeah.
Definitely double digits, but I definitely like him. So we'll get to another guy in a second. This guy is going to be really popular too. He's going to be picking up a lot of love, and this is one that I'm going to. It's interesting because all the stats and everything just kind of really favor this guy. Like Justin Suh is like a premier ball striker. He's a young guy who is kind of came up in the same class as all these other studs like Colin Morikawa and all these guys. He's been the one guy who hasn't quite gotten there yet. So he's going to be kind of popular, whatever it is. But so Mad Scientist play number one is I want to talk about Rasmus Højgaard. Okay. So first, number one, okay, Scandinavia. All right. So this guy, like, he's really, really young, and he was tearing up like some kind of the minor tours like a few months ago or whatever it is. So he had like a second, a sixth, a third, a first in August, just murdering it. And then he just comes up, and then he plays the U.S. Open. What chance do you have there, you know? And then he has a cut over here. So from a projection perspective, how are people going to project this dude? You know what I mean? Like they probably don't even, they barely have numbers probably on these stupid events over here. But from what I hear, the guy's really, really good. And my first look at during the week was, before the week says, okay, this is going to be one of those popular young guys everybody's going to play. But they priced him so high. They priced him like 8,800. And I mean, if you look at, I think Rotograph, one of their projection systems, they have him projected at like 20 points or something like that, or something just nuts, because they just didn't really know how to project guys like this. But I'm in, man. I am going to try it.
You basically have the ceiling as making the cut.
What's that? Exactly. So,
That's right.
Beautiful.
I love your call on this. Keep going.
Wonderful. So he fits the Scandinavian stack. Okay, young guy with nothing but upside. 8,800. You got to be a freaking psycho. Right between the two, probably two of the most popular 5 players on the slate. Like right between Norlander and Sue there. So I am going to take a shot. I'm going to be playing. So those are my 3 guys in this 8K range. I am not actually. So the next guys in the range, I wasn't going to get to any of this other stuff, but these last 2 guys in the range, Adam Schenk and Pat Perez. So I'm going to be very, not prejudiced, whatever it is, but Schenk is going to be everybody's, I don't want to say darling, but Schenk is the perfect guy to play, right? He never misses a cut. He makes every freaking cut. He's 8,100. People have seen him in the tough fields. Totally chill, totally cool. I'll definitely have part of him. He could be owned as well, but that's fine. This Pat Perez is going to be popular, I think. And I watched him play, man. He's fine, but I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm in any big hurry to play Pat Perez. He walks around. He's out of shape. He just kind of slops around the course. I don't know. It's just not for me. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to be playing these guys in the upper 8Ks and maybe some Adam Schenk.
Yeah, so I love the call. I think it's a great point. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that the logic behind it is sound. It all makes perfect sense to me. So I can get behind that. It wasn't the guy who I had low owned in this range. There's another guy who my low owned sort of crazy play in this range, I guess because of the ownership, is Danny Willett.
Let's go. All right.
Because basically Willett plays his best golf all the time in the hard. The more difficult the conditions are, the better he is. You know, he comes out of nowhere. What was it, 2 years ago they won the U.S. Open? Not out of nowhere, but he like, this guy's a middling player, and then every time the field gets tough, he's that guy. And I just find him as like one of the few guys in this range that I could, Højgaard being the other one, but everybody else is going to have some pretty decent ownership and doesn't really match up perfectly for me. So he's my sneaky one, or whatever, the low owned version. And other than that, I like your guys. I like Norlander as well, but again, you're going to have ownership with him and Sue. I like both, but they both have ownership. I'm going to put a lot of more ownership on the Schenk. I understand he's going to be popular, but I'll be ahead of the field, and I'll try and use him with Willett at a few places just so I can get that. You know me. I like to put the guys at the same price range, the same price together, because most people don't do the same thing. So I sort of, and people aren't going to play Willett anyway, so it doesn't matter. But that's sort of what I'm thinking about here. Is it's the chalky guys with some of the Højgaard and Willett.
I love the Willett call again because whenever you have one guy that. Look, Schenk's a great play, right? Whenever you have one guy that's in a particular price range that's just taking over like most of the ownership there, and whatever Schenk's not getting, Perez is getting, right? And maybe even Rogers. And so Willett, like you said, he's gonna get nothing. Right. So I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, and if you look at even like projections of win probability, top 5s, top 10s, and these are different on different sites that actually offer them, but he actually rates out pretty good compared to the rest of these guys, especially factoring in the ownership. So that's my final thing on him. 7Ks?
Okay, so 7Ks there's a lot of dudes here.
Yep.
So I'll just go through it. So Patrick Rogers is one of my guys. I don't know what kind of ownership he's going to get, but I like
Oh.
him. I don't like Stuart Singh. This guy is probably going to get overowned at the end of the day, Wesley Bryan. He just literally is on everybody's favorite playlist, and I don't know, man. Sure, he's fine, but Scott Stallings is, to me, just as good as Bryan in the same range. But I don't know if Stallings is going to go particularly overlooked either. But those guys are fine. I'm not playing Patrick Harrington. The other guy that I'm looking at here, two other guys in this range go down a little bit, is Sepp Straka. And again, he's not Scandinavian, but again, he's a European who's used to playing in the wind a little bit. So I would definitely maybe consider him as someone I would play. I'm not playing Vegas. And another guy that kind of like from Europe that I would play from the 7Ks is Tom Lewis. I got to do a little more work on him, but he's another guy that at least was in my initial looks as guys to play. And I just didn't get to any of these others. Just not enough hours in the day. The one guy I will say, actually two guys all the way at the bottom of this range, is Doug Gim. He actually rates as a decent ball striker, and he just from a couple of models I looked at, just seems just kind of underpriced relative to his skill set. That's the best I can describe it. So Doug Gim and Kyle Stanley. So if you want to go all the way down to these dudes, Gim and Stanley would be my other two guys in this range. Wow, it's a lot of guys, huh, in the 7Ks?
It's interesting. There's a lot of guys, but it basically what's going to happen, I think, and I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I think the ownership flocks almost all to Bryan and Stallings, Straka, and then at the bottom, Duffner and Kyle Stanley. I think those are going to be the guys who are going to be owned in this range. I don't think maybe McCumber will have some ownership, but I'm okay with just going completely different directions. I think Johnny Vegas is kind of interesting.
Okay.
Because he's, another one of these guys who, is used to playing in wind at least, South Africa, all that stuff. Like a little more of a guy who I like as a driver and on long courses, but just a guy at 7,500 that makes a little bit of sense to me. Will have a lot less ownership than the other guys. I don't mind if you want to play, as a pivot off of some of, the other chalky guys I mentioned. I think Bryce Garnett is interesting. I think that Troy Merritt is interesting. And part of this is personal bias. And then I was thinking about Homa, but I think that, again, he's going to be the other one who's going to have some of the ownership. So if you want to get away from that, he'd go. If I had to just pick the guys who I expect to do the best from this range, it would be Bryan, Straka, and Kyle Stanley, along with Duffner. But I think, again, that's where a lot of the ownership's going to be, in my opinion.
All right. So want to have some fun with your 6Ks?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm just going to tell you my I don't even know which one of these guys is going to be on. Maybe you could help me. So I have 5 main guys under 7K. All right. Number one is Bo Hostler.
Okay.
Number 2 is Keith Mitchell. Number 3 is Andrew Putnam. Number 4 is Bronson Burgoon. And number 5 is Will Gordon. Those are my 5 under 7K. Of those guys I mentioned, it looks as though maybe Hostler would be, and maybe Hostler and Gordon would be the ones that would be getting at least something as far as ownership goes. I haven't seen a shred for Keith Mitchell. I haven't seen a shred for Andrew Putnam, and I have seen less than a shred for Bronson Burgoon.
Yeah, we have some different guys and some of the same. I really like the Keith Mitchell one. I really like Will Gordon. I understand that he's going to have the more ownership in this range. That's fine by me. It's not going to be that high still. I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be above 12%. I don't think, maybe 15.
Oh, no way.
That'd be shocking to me a little bit. Yeah. I like Chase Seifert. I think he's
good one. I like that.
And he's one of my guys out down here I've got prioritized along with Mitchell, Gordon, and Hank LaBoida. Might get a little bit of ownership, but he's another one I'm into. And then I didn't have Hostler on there, but I will say I don't think he's going to be high owned. So I like that. I can get behind it. The one guy who I've heard a few people talk about, Chris Baker, down at 6.5. I still don't think he'll get much ownership. So I'm sort of mixing these guys in like you with the higher priority on Gordon, Mitchell, and Seifert.
You hear anything now? A couple of guys have brought up this guy Gligic to me. I didn't really get to him, but it's so funny. Like two guys that I really like respect in the industry, like threw him out there, and I don't know if he's going to get owned or whatever. He doesn't. The projection systems don't like him too much, but I guess I got to look at you. Did you look at him? Do you know anything about him?
I saw that his name was brought up by a couple of guys. I don't think it's the same guys that you're talking about, but I didn't have him as one of my guys this time. I would like a guy who at one point made a top 10 at some point in his life.
Okay.
And I don't know. I sort of like the other guys enough to where I didn't need to do it. But maybe he is. Maybe I should dig a little further on him.
I mean, I'll sprinkle him just in case. I mean,
yeah. Putnam, I can get behind as well. Even though I didn't have him on my initial list, you mentioned him earlier. I like him a little bit.
None of this garbage down here, right? Like,
it's once you get to the very bottom, it's hard for me to make a justification of playing these guys.
Okay.
The closest I would feel about the really bottom would be, like, I think the lowest. Yeah, I think the lowest I would go would be, and I don't even want to play Ricky Barnes, but he would be probably the lowest I would go. I guess Gligic you could consider, but mostly for me, I think you get enough differentiation with these other guys, with Seifert, with Garnett, who's a little bit higher, with Will Gordon. Like you did mention Burgoon and Hostler, who I think are interesting as well, even though I didn't initially have them. There's a lot of ways you can get really different, and I don't think there's a huge talent drop off between any of these guys. So I'm kind of open to all of it. And the one other guy who just might be, he's always done, like, he's just sort of always around, and he sort of he's had a pretty decent, for the most part, season with a few bad weeks lately, and probably would have been high owned here if it was a month and a half ago or so. And that's Von Taylor. Oh wait, you've got him up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Von Taylor was. That's just, I didn't even notice that. I was looking at my notes. But he's the other one I would consider. I think he's actually a much better play than. Let's put it this way. I think he's a safer play maybe than some of the other guys I mentioned to make a cut or something like that. I know.
And what's kind of cool about it is that that's in the face of missing like every cut.
I know, and then he did have a good start right after the thing. He had yes, he didn't much. I was looking at his old February numbers anyway too, because before the break he was making a lot more cuts, but he hasn't done anything in forever. Plays well on this type of short courses in general. That's a big bonus for him. Where every course we've been playing at seems like it's been a mile long, or miles long, I should say, because a mile is not that far. But yeah, so he's the other one I would just consider in there.
So I have a question. And again, I was thinking about this too. Let's say that, and I asked you this a couple of times. You didn't quite answer it the way I wanted you to either way. But okay. So let's just say that you were trying to construct lineups or lineup restraints with respect to ownership, right? Do you think it's enough to like take one 1% owned guy out of 6, or do you need to, for example, have like 6 guys that are all about like 12%? You know what I mean? Like I know it depends on the slate, depends on a lot of stuff, but is it enough? Like with six golfers, maybe it is. With 6 golfers, have one guy, and then I'm back to my other question: is it really enough to have like one $6,400 guy at 1%? You know what I mean? He's not really going to win anything for you, right? He'll make the cut. Well,
I don't know about that though. That's
okay.
We've seen a lot of these 6K-ish guys. I mean, don't forget, Matt Wolff was one of these guys not too long ago.
Right.
True. And Will Gordon, it sort of fits the same bill as like the Matt Wolff, young up and comer stud guy who, wouldn't have surprised me if he was 8,700 at this tournament. It really wouldn't have. I think he's on the come up. So in this particular case, and with these weaker fields, I would try to get at least 2 guys, maybe not in the 6Ks, but 2 cheaper guys who are significantly below 10% owned. And I think that you'd want for your whole lineup to have 3 or 4 of them to try to win these giant tournaments. I mean, especially, but in terms of you single entry and whatnot, I still think you want at least a couple of them that are probably in the 5% range. I just don't think that there's that much difference between these guys, and I just want to play the low owned as much as I can. All right, Tom Lewis. You didn't mention Tom Lewis.
Yeah, I did actually.
Oh,
yeah,
did?
He's a guy from England. So in this lineup, for example, I have like nobody, I have everybody in the middle, and only one guy from the United States. So that's good.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
All right. So I think we've covered pretty much everything.
Yeah,
no?
Yeah. If you guys have any more thoughts or questions, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up in the video and the chats, and and we'll get them answered for you. And then we're gonna do football right after this, right, Sheets?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, guys. Hey, for Sheets, I'm Bobby saying thanks for sticking here with us, and we'll see you at the top of the leaderboard this weekend.